Alrighty then, it's 1783 and America is a free country. Of course, we've been free since July the 4th, 1776, but in 1783 it's official. We got a treaty signed by the British, we got a friend across the Atlantic named France, and we've got our own defined borders, more or less. This green stuff is ours. We got the colonies, we get the West. Got a border dispute up here, Maine and Canada. Over here it's going to be Minnesota one day. And the Spanish are getting obnoxious here about this thing called the Yazoo Strip. But hey, it's okay because we've won the Revolutionary War, followed by a series of disturbing questions, beginning with what now? Alrighty, egalitarianism among white men. That's what we fought this revolution for. But just because you're a white man doesn't mean you haven't made. Because in order to vote, you have to have what? Amount of property, and in some of these states, a certain amount of property. So if you're a poor white man, yeah, let's face it, it's not the greatest setup here for you. So early American society is a clone of English society. Why? It's where we came from, it's what we know. But it's still not quite the same thing over here because people went west, they built their own farms, own businesses, don't owe anybody anything. So if you're walking around in your clothes and you expect somebody to put down a jacket for you to walk over a puddle, yeah, it's not going to happen, man. Just go around it, okay? You come to my store, hey, how you doing? I'm nice, I'm polite, I'm trying to sell you something. But, if you're not buying anything, get lost. Plus also the Revolutionary War, right? We fought and shed blood together. Whether you're rich or poor, you may be a big landowner and I may be a humble farmer, but we fought together at Bunker Hill and I saved your life and you saved mine, so that changes that dynamic a little bit, right? So egalitarianism is something that's going to run through America that you don't see in Great Britain. Now, some people like John Adams, they're still snobs. All right, I know some people you just can't help, right? But they're smart enough not to push it, right? Because just because you're rich and you insist on someone putting a jacket down, it's not going to happen. And because you keep pushing it, you're going to get popped in the nose. Abigail Adams, his wife, she is the what I would consider the first feminist of post-independent America, right? I'm sorry, the first independent American feminist, because she had written to her husband. I don't know why you didn't say face to face. I guess she wrote it down for record keeping. That I hope you do not forget the ladies. Translation: we fought for egalitarianism. That means everybody, right? Women in this era don't have a lot of rights, but Abigail Adams gets the ball rolling slowly because women in this period are considered Republican mothers. Women are charged with educating their children, giving them civic virtue as well as basic literacy skills. So, in order for them to teach their children, they need to be educated themselves. And once they become educated and begin looking around and start asking questions, that's how reform starts. She's also famous for another quote: learning is not attained by chance, it must be sought for with ardor and diligence. No particular reason, just thought you should see that. African Americans in the Revolutionary War. How it turned out sort of depended where you lived. If you were African American in the South, you're going to be a slave. 99.9% chance. Any free African American in the South, both of them, are headed straight for Boston. Now, if you live in the North, a lot of these states began to outlaw slavery on their own, starting with New Hampshire and Vermont. Slavery's still legal, but it's just not something that happens. To be honest with you, the growing season's too short, right? Agriculture is much different, and plus, growing moral indignation over it. But African Americans are free in the North most of the time. Here's Peter Salem. He fought at Bunker Hill, free man, decided to fight. Bunker Hill, a couple other battles, went back home to Boston. Hey, it's a militia. You come and go as you please. Here's Phyllis Wheatley. She was a slave living in Boston because it was still legal at the time, domestic servant. She wrote a book on poetry. Yeah, strangely, I can't remember the name right off the bat, but I was actually assigned that book in high school to read, but I didn't read it. I made a deal with a cheerleader. She does my English assignment, I do her history assignment. She's still going out with a football player, so it didn't quite work out the way I thought it would. Alrighty, so worst thing ever to strike Native Americans. right? Moonshine is like the drug epidemic now, right? Now, the British had promised the western lands to the Native Americans as a permanent reserve. Now that the Americans, U.S., has won the war, all the U.S. settlers are flooding over the Appalachians. There's no line of proclamation anymore, and we've got conflict with Indians. Plus, as you remember, the Continental Army wasn't really paid that often or at will or at all sometimes. And so they pay them off by giving them land out in the West. I've been looking at Charles II's book, huh? Well, anyway, that leads to conflict because there's people already living there. Native Americans. Some Native Americans adopt to U.S. lifestyle. Some are going to fight. Some start looking to the British for help because they helped them out the last time. Some go looking to the Spanish for help. And given the Spanish record on Native American relations, that it's not good. What does it say about us, right? Chickasaw, who lived down in the Arkansas and Mississippi area, they tried to negotiate as an independent nation, mixed results. It's going to end very badly in 1835. So the question is, what kind of government should we have? I mean, the Articles of Confederation is not working too good because, well, let's face it, there's really no coordination. The states, not colonies anymore, now they're states, have two legislative houses. Big surprise, just like British Parliament. They had the House of Lords and the House of Commons, so we've got similar setup over here in the states. They also had a tendency to divide representatives equally. So if I got a district with 100 people, it gets one representative. I got a next district over has got 1,000, they get one representative. So the minority is actually electing most of the people. And not everyone thinks that's fair, especially in a democracy. And property requirements, right? You need property requirements to vote, but it's getting reduced. 9 of 13 states, I should have wrote states, not colonies here, after 1783 start reducing their property requirements needed to vote because, like I said earlier, we fought and bled together through the Revolutionary War, so time to start democratizing things because it was all about democracy. Some people wonder, hey, Mr. H, why did you need property to vote? Well, this is an idea that goes way back to ancient Athens. Here's a quote you see in various forms that pop up for the last 2,000 years. Wisdom, remarkable integrity, or that weight which arises from property. This essentially is the belief that if you own land, you care more about it than someone who doesn't. Now, that's how I used to think back then, but they're starting to reduce the property requirements. Eventually, we're going to get rid of them, but it's going to take a while. So, egalitarianism again, and we're all in this together, United States. John Adams is a bit of an aristocratic snob. Some people you just can't help. He believes in a hierarchical sort of society. He thinks maybe we need a hereditary monarchy, or perhaps even a king. What's wrong with you, man? Are you completely insane? Didn't we just fight a war to get away from that? I honestly wonder why John Adams even fought for the revolution in the first place, and somehow he becomes our second president. I don't know. There's some people I just can't figure out. Now, after 1783, revolutionary leaders described themselves as Republicans rather than Democrats, not today's Republican or Democratic Party, small r, small d. The difference is a pure democracy, everybody gets a vote if you own property, right? So if I have 100 people, each one gets a vote. Now, a Republican government, Republican representatives, I have 100 people, I divide them up into 5 groups of 20, and everybody sends a representative. So I got 5 people to talk to rather than 100, we got 5 votes. So that's what that's all about because it streamlines operations and moves things along a little bit faster, and it still takes forever. Later, many states started amending their constitution, creating stricter property requirements. Why are they restricting property requirements? Well, at further you get away from 1783, well, people start to actually move and everything. Like, say, I'm there at Bunker Hill with some rich guy, and of course, I'm in the Continental Army. I haven't been paid, and they give me land in Ohio. So I move, and I'm going to Ohio. So now property requirements start to tighten up a little bit. Plus, the further you get away from the emergency, things start to go back the way they used to be. During the Revolutionary War, you grab anybody you can, and you promise them voting rights and everything else. The further you get away from it, you start to forget about it, and that's just human nature. I mean, if you're driving along and you slam on the brakes because you're too busy looking at the Rick and Morty episode on your phone instead of traffic light, Yeah, after that, you're looking at every traffic light and you got both hands on the wheels. Please do that. Don't look at your phone while you're driving. So further you get away from the emergency, you start going back to old habits. Governors can now veto legislation and make appointments. Beforehand, governors really couldn't do anything because people were terrified of one person having all the power. That's a holdover from the old British thing. Now, veto legislation, make appointments, try to move stuff along, make it a little bit more streamlined. Trying to, anyway. Now, here's a good thing to know. Essay. Essay. The weaknesses of the Article of Confederation. Now, we give the Articles of Confederation a hard time, and deservedly so, but remember something. It not only got us through the Revolutionary War, it got us through with a win. Unfortunately, that's the only thing it had going for it. Articles of Confederation is a weak national government. All 13 states kind of do their own thing, 13 different people running in 13 different directions. You're not going to get anything done. Congress cannot tax or regulate commerce among the states. So I'm in Pennsylvania and I'm shipping something to Massachusetts. I got to talk to New York before it even gets there. And how do I know New York and Massachusetts don't have some kind of problem? There's no common currency. You expect to see the dollar up and down the East Coast. Yeah, you'll probably see it along with a bunch of other things. There's at least 15 different currencies floating around. Yeah, each state has its own currency. Everyone still accepts the British pound. Everyone likes gold. I said at least 15 because some states have more than one currency. The extreme northwest corner of North Carolina had its own currency. Western Virginia has its own currency. So I'm not really sure what to bring. Bring gold. Everybody likes gold. There's just one vote per state, so the size doesn't matter. So Virginia, the largest state, has one vote, and Rhode Island, the smallest state, has one vote. And it takes one vote to stop anything in the Articles of Confederation Congress. There's no executive branch, so nobody's leading it. No judicial branch, so each state has its own judicial system. We have 13 different systems and nobody to regulate or decide disputes between any of them. What's legal in one state's illegal in another, could be legal again in some other state. Nobody knows. Now, the states see themselves as sovereign, and that's not good for business. In fact, today we say the United States is doing this, the United States is this, the United States. Back then it was the United States are, because each state sees itself as sovereign. Robert Morris, from the great state of Pennsylvania, superintendent of finance, proposes a 5% import duty on anything coming into the country. So the government has some kind of money to operate. They go up in front of the Confederation Congress. Rhode Island says no, the whole thing falls apart, which really upsets Boston, New York, and Philadelphia, the three largest ports who need the money more than anyone else. In fact, every tax proposal is going to fail because it takes one state to say no. Trade with Great Britain is suffering. Britain's our main trading partner because, it's still all we know at this point. And the British have no idea what goes on once the goods show up here. They sail into New York, sell some stuff, sail down to, Charleston, and find out the tax laws are completely different. Nobody knows what the rules are. The British don't know what the rules are. We don't even know what the rules are. Eventually, they're going to say too much trouble and go somewhere else like, Scandinavia. Now, with all the economic chaos, here comes the political chaos. Newburgh, upstate New York. We have a conspiracy brewing up there. Yep, we got some army officers threatening a coup unless taxation authority is granted to pay the army. This is not a good thing. They send George Washington up there to investigate. He says, "What's this about a conspiracy?" And you know how this goes. Everyone's talking smack until George Washington shows up. Oh, that's all false. No. I don't know where you got that from. No one said anything like that. Yeah. Anyway, it's still rather disturbing. Let's talk about the West. Forget about these page numbers. They don't mean anything. State colonialism. Your loyalty to your state is so great in the late 1700s that you actually go claiming land for your state. Not for the United States of America. You're claiming land for North Carolina. In fact, North and South Carolina nearly went to war over a piece of land they claimed in the West. All right, means your government's not really working too well. The Ordinance of 1785, the Confederation government sends out survey teams to go organize and divide up the land. I'm not sure how they paid these guys, but somebody decided it'd be a really good idea to at least organize everything. By the way, do you know someone already lives out there? Yeah, Native Americans. And the U.S. government, shall I say Confederation government, says you are a conquered, you are a subdued people. We claim the country by conquest. A lot of Native American tribes say we'll just see about that, and we've got fighting up and down the frontier. So they signed treaties, and none of these are going to work. It's kind of this is mine, this is yours kind of thing. Fort Stanwix, Fort McIntosh, Fort Finney. As most treaties go between the federal government and Native Americans, it doesn't work because the federal government tends to lie to everybody. So, driving Native Americans to get help from both the British and the Spanish. The British, because, they did promise that land as a Western Reserve, so maybe the British will help them out against these Americans. We know what the Spanish record is with natives, and if they go running to Spain for help, what does it say about us? Yeah, it's very disturbing. You got a lot of militia battles against Native Americans out west. A lot of these militias, they can't fight their way out of a wet paper bag. The whole thing is just oppressing. I don't even want to look into that. Just know there's a lot of fighting out there. All right, the Northwest Ordinance in 1787. This is what we're going to use to set up future states because we're going to make states out of the West one day. And we're going to keep on using this. As far west as we go, the Northwest Ordinance is going to be used. When's the last time we used this thing? Oh, you know the answer. Yeah, 1959. Hawaii and Alaska. We ever buy some more property somewhere? We're using this again. So you find an area, declare it to be a territory, say Ohio, eventually becomes a state, you got yourself a new state. The Northwest Ordinance banned slavery, though it did leave a back door saying it could be legalized later, but let's face it, it's not going to work up here, right? Climate's different, hard to grow cotton, almost impossible. Plus, the old moral quandary involving slavery. It also shows that slavery is already becoming an issue. No, it's going to be a bigger issue as time goes on. Now, Shays' Rebellion scares the living, I'm going to go with the word bejesus, out of everybody. In western Massachusetts, lots of farms are being foreclosed on, lots of debt out there, and Daniel Shays, an officer who was a veteran of the Revolutionary War, gets a few thousand of his closest friends together to grab pitchforks and torches, and they try to burn down Boston. Well, there's no federal government response to really handle all this since every state does its own thing. John Adams has to get a mercenary army together to put this thing down. And so maybe, just maybe, it's time to amend the Articles of Confederation. Yeah, there's an idea. So they meet in Philadelphia in July of 1787. They chase all the reporters away. It's a really hot day, so let's shut the doors and windows and debate this thing. How many people do you think passed out, huh? How many people do you think lost their temper talking about all this stuff? Well, the first thing they did is they threw the Articles of Confederation right in the garbage. We got the Virginia plan put forth by James Madison, a strong central government. That's what he's in favor of. A legislature that chooses the president and the judges, and he says representatives should be chosen by population. He's from Virginia, so Virginia gets the most representatives. Rhode Island gets the least. William Paterson from New Jersey, and that's who they named that city for, by the way, Paterson, New Jersey, proposes the New Jersey plan with a single chamber Congress with one state, one vote, which sounds a lot like the Articles of Confederation. But what they do have in common is, hey, the federal government stronger than the states. So they agree on that. And then at the last second, here comes South Carolina and Georgia shouting, hey, we get more representatives because, our population's bigger than you think it is. To which everyone else replies, yes, because you have a ton of slaves and you don't give them any rights, so why do you want to count them all of a sudden? Well, anyway, they debate this back and forth and come up with these horrifying three-fifths clause where each slave is counted as 60% of a person. I don't like it either. That's what they did. So eventually reach a compromise of having a legislature with one house with representatives by population, House of Representatives, and another chamber with two senators for every state, hence the Senate. We're getting somewhere. Also notice the payroll's climbing. Here are some important concepts I want you to know real quick. Separation of powers. We have three branches of government. We have a legislative, an executive, and a judiciary. They have defined duties with checks and balances. Now, on your piece of paper, if you got one around somewhere, draw a triangle. A triangle is the most stable shape in nature. If you ever get a chance, look at a bridge, not while you're driving, pull over and take a good look at it. All right, put the phone down. All right, and you notice triangles show up in the architecture because that shape handles stress better than anything else. So one branch cannot dominate the other two. That's where checks and balances come from. Legislature, Congress, can propose law, vote on law, and pass it. They can also vote it down. The executive carries it out, or he can propose laws, but has to send it down to Congress before it can go anywhere. If the executive, president, doesn't agree with it, he can put a veto on it and send it back to Congress. Congress can override the veto, but they need a two-thirds vote to do it. So it's got to be important enough that two-thirds of Congress thinks it's important enough to override the veto. Judicial is the Supreme Court. Finally, somebody coordinate between the states. Plus, all the legislation passed or executive orders has to go past the Supreme Court and see if it passes constitutional muster. If it does not, they can declare it unconstitutional, stop it in its tracks. Congress can actually override a Supreme Court decision there, but it doesn't happen very often. Plus, the reason judges have lifetime appointments or set terms is so nobody can actually pressure them into doing anything. All right, so all this is called federalism. We have shared power and dual lawmaking between state and national governments. They have their set of duties. National government has its set of duties. National rules over state. There's still some gray area, and people still, still argue over stuff like this. But that's democracy, because as long as you have democracy, it's always going to be loud. It's always going to be obnoxious, because everyone's got different opinions. You put 3 people in a room, you'll get 5 different opinions. Welcome to democracy, the worst form of government on the planet, except for all the other ones. Guys, have a great day, and we'll talk about our new republic in just a bit.